until we can figure out a better system for law enforcement, which we still need. That's just the reality. Hate to get super political. It's probably the most political take I've ever had on this channel, but like, by its nature, the way that the systems in place in the current legal system, law enforcement is a system of oppression at the moment. Not saying that all police officers are bad. You're just part of an institution that oppresses people, and that's just the reality of the situation if you're part of law enforcement. That is the facts of the matter. It's ugly. It's not fun. I'm sure you've met police officers who were great. I'm sure that there are police officers who are not super shitty people. But it's the institution behind it that needs to change if there's going to be any change with law enforcement. You know, the police in my area are often pretty great. Not all the time, but often. And I've never had problems with the police, but granted, my skin tone is several Pantones lighter than the vast majority of people who the police are gonna you know, abuse. Yeah, sorry. Institutionalized racism exists in the police department where you live, practically guaranteed. It's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. I don't know why I'm getting into this. What's going on? Oh, I know why. I know why. Either way, what I'm saying, it's because of something I read in the news earlier today. But what I am saying, all I'm saying is that, hey, as a white person, the likelihood of the police harassing me for no reason is much lower than as a person of color. That's just a fact. That's just, like, if you can't accept that, you're just not living in reality. That is an apolitical fact. And if you don't agree with me on that, you are just wrong. And yeah, I'm talking about this while playing a Kung Fu game. I don't know where this is coming from. I don't know why I've chosen to talk about this. I know why I'm thinking about it, and it's because of something that happened recently that I saw in the news, but shit, I don't know. Dude, I guess we're talking about, isn't that the beauty? That's the beauty of things like Let's Plays and stream of consciousness, especially for someone like me who just spews out what they're thinking about a lot of the time. You just careen into topics like this for no reason.
Come on.
Hi.
Try harder, you fool.
Oh my god. It's difficult to process with such a complicated topic as institutionalized racism in the law enforcement and police systems of the United States. It's difficult to concentrate on your kung fu fight. Let me tell you that. I can tell you that much for free. Oh my god. Ah, fuck. I didn't intend to talk about these topics. That was not, my friends, that was not my intention. And if that makes you uncomfortable, I can understand, but I have not said anything controversial, I'm afraid. It's just a fact. Oh, start, I'm so focused on the Kung Fu fight. I completely forgot how the conversation of institutionalized racism and systemic racism started. What did I do? Oh, fuck. I'm gonna have to watch this again to figure it out. I don't mind talking about these things. Like, my political affiliations being known, doesn't matter that much to me. What matters to me is making sure that when I am talking about it, I'm being clear about what I mean, and what I'm saying is accurate and not driven by emotion and implicit biases that I have. Because I have them. Everybody does. And knowing what they are and understanding where they come from is very important for anyone who wishes to have integrity to do. If you want to be an honest person, you need to understand how your own biases that you have developed through your life can affect what you are thinking and what you are saying. And I definitely have them. And they have affected me. I'm lucky, because of how I was raised, that I don't have the typical implicit biases that can be expected from someone who is white and grew up in the South, but I definitely have some. I was just raised in an environment and in such a way that allowed me to not have the typical implicit biases that come from a Southern white boy. Damn it. So I'm lucky in that regard. I'm lucky in that regard compared to some of my peers. So, you know, there's that. As long as we're talking politics, and if you want to know my political association, it's very difficult to kind of describe, because I have things that what my political alignment is culturally clashes with what the establishment of politics in general is, which is I am pretty far left leaning, but I'm also very libertarian leaning, because libertarian and right and left are separate entities. Libertarian is just the opposite of authoritarian. So what does that mean? Well, it means that I believe that the government's job is to help its citizens as much as possible, whether through that social programs or ensuring the health and safety of its citizens or whatever. However it is, that's what the government is responsible for, protecting us from threats, foreign and domestic, ensuring the safety and health of its citizens. So I believe in things like universal health care. I believe in things like social programs that help reduce homelessness. And all the things like that. As a libertarian, I also believe in personal freedoms, the right to own firearms, the right of the right of religious freedom. But those rights and freedoms stop when they start oppressing the personal freedoms of others. You know? So it's like, oh, I believe in religious freedom. I believe that, hey, you should be able to practice the religion that you practice as long as you are not impeding on the freedoms of others. So, like, for instance, what do I want to use an example? No, not that. I don't actually. Yeah. What's an example? If you are a church, right? If you're a church and you don't want to have a gay wedding at your church, you're a piece of shit and I fucking hate you. But you have that right. What you're not allowed to be is a court-appointed a court-appointed employee in charge of marriage license and denying a license to a gay couple. That is not allowed. You know? Because you are not allowing that person to get married for your political or religious beliefs. Those are not protected. Because you are the government, you are not allowed, as the government, to impede on the freedom of the couple who wish to get married. They should be allowed to get married. But as a church, you're a private institute. Well,
for a special.
Okay. So, all right, there is some nuance to what I'm saying. So, this is okay. All right. Politics are complicated, and this is what I mean by I want to make sure that I'm saying what I mean to say. So, this is assuming that the church is running as a private institution and therefore is not getting a tax break from the government. I believe if you are getting a tax break from the government, the church should have to officiate gay weddings for Christian gay people. Like, you know, if you're a lesbian, if you're gay and you're Christian, good for you, and you should be allowed to be married in the church of your choosing if that church is not being taxed. I personally don't necessarily agree with churches and religious institutions not paying taxes. I understand why it exists. I understand the history of it. In practice, I have not agreed with what has happened because of that. And so I think that churches should be paying taxes unless they can prove that a certain percentage of their income, of their revenue, is going towards their community, helping the homeless in their community, soup kitchens, helping the poor, things like that. Essentially, if the only reason why a church or any religious institution for that matter should not be paying taxes is if it's operating essentially as a nonprofit helping the community that it's in. That's what I believe. All right. So assuming that, then the church is also operating as a branch of the government and should not be allowed to deny people certain services based off of religious beliefs. I'm sorry. That's just what I believe. However, if the church is operating as a private institution, and it's a small church, then you're operating as a branch of the government. Wait. As long as the church is operating as a private institution where it's not getting its aid from the government, then within reason, they're allowed to be like, actually, no, we don't believe in gay marriage in our church. Sorry. And they should be allowed to do that. That's religious freedom. The gay people, the gay people can get married through the court. They can get married in a different church. There's going to be churches that are willing to marry you. However, if you're a large business and you want to be like, oh, we don't want to serve like black people, I'm sorry, you kind of have to, because you're a large business. You have to. You're impeding on the freedom of the people of your customers there, you know? So it's like, God, political discussion is difficult enough. But yeah, so for me, libertarian means that personal freedoms are the most important to me. And so any law that we create, any rules that we have should keep that in mind. Is the best way that I can simplify it. Being a democratic socialist means that I also believe in that the government's role is to help its citizens to the best of its ability. Like that is what I believe. the main thing that comes with that, and the main mistake that I think that America has made, is that it treats large corporations and companies as people. So there are a lot of like anarcho-capitalists or libertarians who have that same view that corporations and companies and entities should be treated as individual people, when I do not believe that. The way that I view corporations are, like, the way that they function in my political beliefs are essentially as foreign entities operating on American soil. Because since they're private institutions, they don't have the same incentives to help people. Their only incentive is to make profit. As it should be, as a business, that as an entity whose sole purpose is to make money, that should be their focus. It's not wrong of them to try and make money. What's wrong of them is that they hurt the people and the environment in the process of making money, and it's the government's job to prevent them from doing that. It's the government's job to be like, no, you can't do that. But it's very difficult for the government to do that, and it's because of lobbyism. And the only reason why lobbyism exists is because the United States government has treated corporations and large corporations and companies as people. They're allowed to donate to campaigns. They are allowed to sponsor politicians. It's essentially legal bribery, and that should not be allowed. Corporations, companies are not people. They do not have the people's interests in other people's interests in mind. All they have in mind is, what can I do to make sure I make the most money possible year to year? What can I do to make as much profit as possible? I can use slave labor in other countries where there is no regulation against slave labor. Sure, I'll do that. I can do all of my business in the country, in America, but conduct all of my business outside of America? Okay, I'm making products for a country, but I'm not going to have any of my manufacturing or any of the process that goes into the making of my products in the country that it's in. I'm not going to actually provide jobs in the country that I operate most of my business in. Okay, that's fine. Because, I just want to. I want to do that. I'm going to make sure to pay politicians on both sides of the aisle so that they have incentive to not vote against the policies that allow me to do things like that allow me to actively make the country worse. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. They should be heavily regulated so that they're not allowed to do that. That's how monopolies exist. A lot of people will be like, oh, the free market will decide things. Well, guess what? This quote-unquote free market is rigged. I'm sorry. It was rigged from the start, and that's just been the reality. Yes, there are ways for people to kind of sort of climb up, to claw their way out of absolute poverty, but you're never gonna be able to get to the point of those corporations within your lifetime unless you have a lot of luck or you are already born in a position that will allow you to do that. And that's just the reality of the situation. It's unfortunate, it's miserable, it's awful, and everybody hates it, and there's not much we can really realistically do about it at this point, other than to advocate for things like not allowing things like lobbyism to exist anymore, not allowing super PACs to exist. The budgets for campaigns should be decided on by the government, preferably by just, you have the same amount of money no matter what, rather than necessarily donations or things like that, unless we can prove that those donations aren't coming from large corporations, and there's a cap on the donations that you're allowed to take in. There's all sorts of things wrong. And there are people on the left who are who want these things to happen, but they don't believe that the way to do it is through democracy. And I can understand why they'll they'll subscribe to that belief that no, the only way is anarchy. The only way is to just, you know, completely remove the system that we already have. And I can understand that. I can agree with that to a certain extent, but I feel like that the people who advocate for that don't really have a plan that's realistic and conducive to a peaceful society. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Oh well, got distracted by political talk. So it's just like, you know,
You need to be purged.
there's just not much to be done.